Welcome back, Tactician, to part 2 of our course on Flex Play. I'm Professor Blap, here to teach you to be a better gamer. And if you have no idea what I'm talking about, make sure to check out part 1 of our Flex Play guide right here, as we'll be picking up right where we left off. Okay, quick recap. If you've been playing Flex well up until now, you should reach the end of Stage 2 with a pretty reasonable board with a few key upgrades and some items slammed. At a high level, Stage 2 is all about econ. We're building the strongest board we can, playing around the cheapest 1 cost with the least amount of gold so we can get to 50 with the highest amount of HP possible. Now that we built a strong econ foundation, it's time to shift focus on Stage 3, where the main goal is to figure out what comp you're playing and commit to it. Whoa, hold on. Did you just hear me correctly? Did I just say we have to figure out a comp to commit to in a Flex Play guide? There's a pretty good reason for this. In Stage 2, one of the biggest problems for players is committing too early and forcing from the very beginning, but from Stages 3 and onwards, one of the biggest traps to fall into is flexing for too long. You've probably had a game like this before. You think you're going one comp, then suddenly you might need to pivot because you're contested, or you see an early forecast for a different S comp tier. So you spend a lot of Stage 3 trying to go between one comp and another, but never quite really building a good board. And then once you get into Stage 4 on the roll down, you don't really hit the units you want, and maybe you decide to scrap that plan and suddenly pivot at the last second again, and you bleed out so quickly into an 8th. While staying flexible in Stage 2 is really important, the later you get in a game of TFT, the better it is to actually lock into a few different lines. That's mainly because TFT is a really hard game. There's a lot of decisions to be making. Early on, you don't have quite as many units and components to worry about, but that's compounding the later it gets. And you really don't want to load into Stage 4 without a concrete plan of what you're going to do. So Stage 3 is where you'll figure all of that out. Now, of course, we're not locking into a comp at random or based on power level. The comp we end up playing is going to be influenced by our choices in Stage 2 as well, and the principles are mostly the same. Look for a line that matches with your items, units, and augments. One principle often overlooked is that you should be trying to build a board in Stage 4 around the same upgrades you're using in Stage 3. There's two good reasons for this. One is that it's pretty rare that on your level 8 rolldown, you're swapping out your entire board. Most of the time, you want to keep existing upgrades and just slot in 1 or 2 new forecast units. Secondly, while there's a lot of focus in Stage 4 around those forecasts, the 2-star 3 costs that you're often playing around in Stage 3 are more powerful than they may seem, and they may be enough already to carry you through Stage 4. And if you're trying to pivot your entire board, what ends up happening is you need to play the strong units that you already have on your board, but then holding all the units you may need to swap to on your bench, which is eating up a lot of your income. Another important thing to consider are the components you dropped at the last PvE round. For instance, if you slammed a Shojin early on and playing around a backline AP unit, but the PvE round happens to drop 2 swords, well, you could hold on to the swords and hope that you'll find a bow on carousel to make a Giant Slayer, or maybe a rod for a gunblade. But that means you're sitting on 2 open components without doing anything in Stage 3, making your board a lot weaker. Instead, if you find a good AD item holder, a lot of the times it's correct to slam that Deathblade and just play a different line. Now, the examples are endless, and this is really the difficult part about Stage 3. It's a bit of a knowledge check, and the more meta comps you know, the better you'll be at identifying which line to take. So practice makes perfect. And once you've identified a good line to go into on Stage 3, generally it's a good idea not to pivot out of that at the last second. Trust me, trying to change your mind at the last minute is going to probably hurt you more than it'll help you. But at a high level, that's what Stage 3 is about, picking your direction. So let's look at some of the key rounds to help you decide that. First off, with 3-1 right before you choose your first augment. Now, in most games, you won't really do anything here, but it is worth mentioning if you happen to open on a 5 win streak, and you might actually find this happens quite a bit more now that you're playing Flex in Stage 2, you can consider leveling early to 6 if you think it will win you the next fight and you stay above 30 gold. Scout around, see how strong your opponents are, and as long as you have a good next in unit, you should consider going to 6 right away. In most games though, you'll wait till 3-2 after you see your second augment. Now, if you're playing for a level 8 comp and you missed an econ augment on 2-1, you should almost always pick one here when given the option, even over some other augments that may look powerful. The only exception is if you are already on a 5 streak and you do see an augment that will very likely guarantee you continue that streak throughout Stage 3. But otherwise, try not to get greedy, pick econ if it comes up and you missed it the first time. But barring that, the choice is really up to you. The augment choices here are a bit less important than on Stage 2, so we're not going to talk about it too much more. And after picking that augment, pretty much in 99% of your games, unless you're playing 1-cost reroll, you'll level straight to 6. After which comes the next big decision to roll or not to roll. Now, the 3-2 roll down is a pretty hotly debated topic. You'll see some players say you should always roll a little bit, while other players say you should never roll and just econ back up. Obviously, neither extreme is correct, so how do you know where to land in the middle? Well, first of all, the main reason to roll is to hit upgrades for your board so you can win fights in stage 3. If you already have a strong board from stage 2 and lots of upgrades, you may not need to roll at all and can simply level to 6, add a unit, and just keep playing from there. But if you did miss crucial upgrades in stage 2, particularly if you open on a 5 or a 6 loss streak, it's vital that you stabilize now with some upgrades and not keep bleeding. So a couple of baseline rules. Number 1, as always, don't roll below 32 gold. Each gold you go past 32 gets exponentially more expensive, so you should almost always stop, even if you didn't hit those upgrades that you were looking for. And rule number 2, you should only roll if you're holding onto at least 2 or more pairs of units. If you only have one pair and rolling to hit that specific unit, spending that gold is almost never worth it. You should just aim to win fights with the board you have and consider again on the next round or when you get to the next level interval. And this is all about roll efficiency. The more units in a shop that are useful to you when you roll, the more efficient that roll is. Of course, if you went on a huge loss streak and are not working with any upgrades, then you might have to roll to actually figure out what possible upgrades you have to begin with. Also, typically, it's actually really bad to go on a 5 or 6 loss streak without an augment helping you gain additional econ for doing so, like calculated loss. Another great benefit of rolling a little bit on 6 that most players overlook is that you actually have some odds to hit your forecast already. Spiking an early forecast here is a great way to not only build a very strong board for stage 3, but that immediately gives you direction for the comp that you may want to play. And in terms of when to stop, as a general rule, a 1-cost backliner can work in stage 3, but it's often worth digging for an upgraded 2-cost or 3-cost frontliner or a 1-star 4-cost tank if you can find one. So the key takeaway here is don't be afraid to spend a little bit of gold to roll, as long as each roll gives you multiple units that you could hit that you can play on your board. After that, your next checkpoint is 3-5 after the second carousel. Here, if you had good econ, you should be able to level to 7, but still stay above 32 gold. So if you can, do it, put your next unit in. If you can't quite afford it or don't have another good unit to put in, then you can hold off. And that mostly wraps up stage 3. There aren't a lot of individual decisions here to really talk about, but all the while going through stage 3, remember, you're trying to figure out what comp you're playing towards and rolling down for in stage 4. And of course, the hallmark of stage 4 is that 4-2 roll down. Typically, this is where most players will get to level 8, roll down for their forecast, and try to hit their final board. Now, if your econ was a little bit lacking and you can't get to 4-2 with about 30 or more gold to roll down with, you should probably delay that until 4-5. But for future games, make sure you're prioritizing econ so you can actually make it to 8 at 4-2. By now, you should have committed to a specific comp, and you shouldn't be looking to make big pivots during this roll down. Don't be tempted by random units that you see if they don't work for the items and the comp that you're building. But that doesn't mean there isn't some flex here. While a lot of the time, your main carry in those comps is locked in due to the items you've picked, your frontline doesn't always have to be the same one listed on the tier list, and this is where you should be looking to flex the most in stage 4. Not the entire comp, but individual units. If you happen to hit another 2-star 4-cost tank early, even if it's not the main one for your comp, that may be good enough item holder for stage 4, and you can stop there, play that 2-star 4-cost tank, and wait until stage 5. And this is where a lot of players make the mistake of overrolling. Trying to hit a specific frontline and a specific backline unit and have them both upgraded to 2-star is not something you can do without a ton of rolls or econ. Just like on 3-2, rolling for these specific single units is rarely worth it, and you need to be able to flex a little bit more with the units you're trying to hit. Now, the key here is you've been tricked a little bit into thinking that you need to play around a 2-star forecast on stage 4 in order to have a chance at winning. That's often not true. For early stage 4, a lot of players aren't going to hit and are playing around a 1-star, 4, or even 5-cost carry. Don't underestimate 2-star 3-cost. By default, these units are actually stronger than 1-star 4-costs, and provided you have a good comp built around them, a lot of the time a 2-star 3-cost is good enough to get you into stage 5. And this is why it's so important to play around those existing upgrades you have in stage 3 rather than trying to pivot into a completely new board. Because chances are, if you play well in stage 3, you don't really have to roll much at all in stage 4. Now, unfortunately, stage 4 is the hardest to give general advice on because how you play it is affected by the set you're playing, the meta of the set, what comps you're familiar with, and also what items you've slammed and your current board. But this is a great opportunity if you're still struggling to go watch some streamers and see how they approach the level 8 roll down. Another tip I can leave you with is don't be fooled into thinking you have to roll all your gold on Fort 2. One thing you can do is just roll 10 gold at a time, see what units you hit, and try to build the best board with that, and then just wait until next round. That will give you a bit of practice in rolling, and over time you'll be able to speed up and do it all in one round. Doing this well is one of the hardest things to learn in TFT, so don't be afraid to take your time and learn slowly at your own pace. Over time, I guarantee you'll start getting better at that roll down, saving more gold, and be able to push to level 9 and cap out at first places a lot more frequently. That's a wrap on this Flex Play guide. Hope you got something out of it, and if it helped you, make sure to drop a comment below, give this video a like to help support me and the channel, and help other players find it as well. And make sure you're subscribed so you know when the next lesson becomes available. But until next time, class dismissed.